Hi, everyone. We're back here today, and I've got with me Gary Salyer. He is one of my favorite people online because we are in similar lines of work. He helps couples and individuals with how to love better. And today, I think what we're going to talk about is how can you retrain your brain so that you make a better partner? Hi, Gary. Thanks for being here.
And hi, Julie. It's great talking again. I mean,
Yeah.
you're one of my faves.
Yeah, yeah. We met a couple years ago. I don't know, might have been almost 4 years ago, um, at a summit. I had you on my summit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Remember
So we've stayed in touch. It's been good.
that?
And let's see, we want to tell, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about who you are?
Well, I mean, when I think of who I am and not just what I do, I mean, I work with attachment theory and I
Uh-huh.
help people rewrite the rules of love in their brains, right? So they can have a loving soulmate beside them, whether they're single or couple. But I think of myself something of a pilgrim in life. And I think of a pilgrim who's, learning a whole lot of soul lessons. And
Okay.
and I think that when I think of myself, it's been like a pilgrimage.
Oh, yeah. You've been doing it for your whole life, or
Yeah,
since early on in your life. Yeah.
I mean, it really kind of started at 7, to be honest with you.
Okay. Yeah, that's early.
Yeah, yeah. Just looked at my uncles and my aunts and said, "Why can't people, adults, be nice to each other?"
I
And
am sure that there's a lot of kids out there that have had that question on occasion.
who knew it was going to grow into this, right?
Right. A lifelong quest to how to do a relationship well.
Exactly.
And it seems like you have finally hit the jackpot because you got married recently.
I did. I,
Yeah.
we've been together about 5.5 years, and we got married in October.
Oh, lovely, lovely. Well, congratulations. I'm very happy to hear that.
Thank you. It's a great relationship.
Yeah.
If you're
Well,
out there listening and you get despondent, wonder if it can happen. Yes, it can happen. It might take some inner work, but it is truly worth it. It's our birthright. And don't
yeah.
ever forget that.
You were saying that there were times in your life when you settled and then you realized you didn't have to.
Yeah.
Yeah. How,
Well,
how'd you get into that?
okay. Well, I've been divorced twice, right?
Uh-huh.
And you got to realize I set out in life, got a psych degree and a marriage and family to make sure I would never get divorced like everybody in my family. So I married my college sweetheart. And just imagine when, 12 years into it, I want a divorce. I was, no, no, wait a minute. I did 2 degrees to make sure this didn't happen. How did this happen? I don't understand it. So I did a bunch of therapy, thought I had reworked enough, what was going on or whatever, you know. And then I think I need to get married. And I think I kind of settled. And that relationship, I mean, I knew 3 months into it, oh God, no. And and it was far less than satisfying. And I had no idea someone could be that distant,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it was over within 3, and basically, and then legally in 4. And
Yeah.
it was like watching Rome burning, and I learned from that, don't push, and it has to be right. Love has to be right on its own terms, and there is no settling, because if it's not right, you guessed it, whatever is not right is going to grow. That's just how it is. When we get into our relationship, things don't stay same. If that once that rift starts, it's like a rip in your shirt.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's going to get worse unless you fix it early. And if it's not fixable, and so I learned to from that lesson, don't settle. And not not in a perfectionistic way, but it's got to be right love.
Right. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, gotta,
What was the drive behind getting, you said I got to get married again. I feel like
well,
people,
I had been divorced for like 10 years, and there was a part of me, I think that at times said, I have to be validated. And
mm,
I got tired of the stigma that came with being single.
okay.
I got tired of the game of being single. That I could have been, I told everybody at the beginning, I would have been happy having just one woman the rest of my life.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I found it, the 10 years that were between those two marriages, I really, the constant repetitiveness of the same thing happening. Now, the funny thing was I kept looking outside for it. Why is this thing kept happening? Right. Well,
Uh-huh.
those patterns were happening because of what was within me. And as well as I loved my therapist at the time, um, that wasn't really pointed out. Did you notice that, there's a pattern here in who you pick and how you create and what you allow into and I couldn't see that the pattern was within me getting,
Well,
uh,
right. It just feels, I've talked to other people who are like, why do I keep finding people who do the same thing to me over and over again?
exactly.
But it has a lot to do with how you're showing up and who you choose to continue a relationship with.
One of the things that never showed up, and I love the therapist from that time. I mean, she really did a lot of good things for me. I love Elizabeth. She's passed on by now, right? So, and she did a lot of good things, right? But what she never really looked at were the deeper attachment patterns.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Now, attachment theory wasn't that in vogue. It was in academic circles at the
Right,
time.
right.
But there was a common denominator that safe equals distance.
Ah.
This was the algorithm. I call it the algorithm, the algorithm
Yeah,
and fake social media
yeah,
roles.
yeah, yeah.
This was the algorithm. Safe equals distance. And what I didn't realize is like in the first marriage, there were ways I created the distance
Uh-huh.
because, and it went back to a little 4-year-old who one day was thinking I'd like to be with my mom downstairs in the kitchen, like a lot of 4-year-olds do. But then he thought of the times he hit the wall because she was borderline and then said, maybe I'll just stay up here and play with my toys instead.
Hmm.
Because safe equals
Distance.
distance, you know. And that was still running isomorphically.
Yeah.
That's the rule in my brain. When my first wife would say, I'm alone, I go, what do you mean? I'm in my room studying and we're in the same house. Same isomorphic structure, right? Now, I do all this stuff and I find all the ways I can show up distance and I, mentally adjust for them, right? But deep down inside, the algorithm was still working,
Yeah, yeah. Hmm.
right? And so even though I befriended those types deep social media, the algorithm went and found other people like that. And so I married a woman who did the distance for me. And I remember thinking, karma is a bite.
Yeah.
I did get a taste of what I dished out the first time. I even went to my first wife and apologized for a whole different and this was many, many years ago, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And and even still, when we did the marriage counseling, no one figured out there's a rule in the brain and
Yeah, yeah,
attachments
yeah.
that safe equals, distance. Love better have some distance to be safe. And, when that works, I mean, in my book, Safe to Love Again, I talk about a right that all of us born, it comes online when you're a toddler, to be to separate and belong.
Mm-hmm.
Notice the 4-year-old had a whole lot of right to separate,
Mm-hmm.
not to belong.
Not to
And
belong.
if you can't separate and come home to a loving, supportive we, every couple that I've ever seen stumbles over one way or another. They can't be me's in a supportive we. Either the we isn't meshing or they've got Marlboro mates going on, you know. And so you can't create, and that is what creates. So if we're going to look at these rules, it was in finding better and better ways of teaching my brain to be safe and restoring what I would call rights in the book. These days, I'm calling them our natural capacities, for
Yeah,
love,
yeah.
right? I had more capacity to pull myself up by my bootstraps than to be in a we. Although, as I look back, I would have said to myself, who created the bootstrap?
Right, right.
Right? Even a broader we is out there. So It was, the inner work is what creates love.
So
It,
what you're saying is that we all have these sort of rules around what love is that we got as a kid,
Mhm.
and they are running in the background and likely screwing it up
Yes.
if you're not in a relationship that's good for you.
And the thing is, yes, they're dysfunctional, but at one time, and we don't want to get in a fight with ourselves because the part of us that's down there will fight and win. One time dysfunctional, back then functional. What I say to my clients is, that your brain took the best deal available, but the best deal available at 4, not so good at 24, not
Yeah.
so good at 44, right? And and so, you know, the inner work is, and I think, and I'm just going to be experimental. No, with full rapport with yourself, where you're looking for what good thing, even the most painful thing, was trying to do, so you don't judge it, so you don't get in a war. But it really takes an observer zone that has much compassion,
Yes.
that looks at you, your parts or your patterns,
Mhm.
and says, "Wow, is this love?
Right.
What is this trying to do?" I once studied with Dick Schwartz, and I talked about it as observer zone. People call it a witnessing mind. And he says, "I like it." He says, "But I'd like it better if it was a compassionate observer zone."
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that's Dick Schwartz,
Yeah, yeah.
the creator of internal family
Right.
system.
Right.
I have found the greatest thing that's helped me is not just learning skills. I mean, I learned skills with the first therapist, but I couldn't outrun the rule.
Right. You can't
It,
outrun the rule because it's
it,
just
it's
embedded
it,
deeply
yeah,
there.
distance found a way to come backdoor through my choice of a distant partner.
Hmm.
And I couldn't understand how that happened because I wasn't doing it, but I outsourced it. And the brain said, "Oh, we can't do it ourselves. Let's go get someone else to do it."
So if you can't left brain the process, which is what I
Yes,
think a lot of
exactly.
us try to do, right? Like, okay, well, let me figure out what's going on and what I need to do differently and then start doing it differently. But that's what you're saying is not going to allow us to outrun that pattern. So what do we do?
Okay, one of the things that has been the shock of my life, because I was so left brain,
Yeah.
we're pretty clear if you read people like Bonnie Badenoch or
Hmm.
others, that attachment is a right brain deal.
Yeah, it is.
It needs that fuller emotional context, and that part doesn't deal with language. And it's the left brain that analyzes and tries to fix and tries to find that. But the problem, if you're all left brain oriented, you don't really see the context. So it will take a leap of faith, and the left brain is known to be a liar. It will
It
figure
is.
out a way. Oh, this must be, it's not the problem. And you drill deep and you go, "I didn't find any oil," because you didn't have your right brain.
Yeah.
Stepping into my feeling self has been, and wiring myself to be attentive to feelings first and fix second, or logic second, has been the biggest thing that I've done. And it's like a blind man getting a sight. I mean, we are always transmitting through our face. That's Stephen Porges's work.
Hmm.
Our brains are wired to rat our emotional self out, or to reveal, rat or reveal. Guess, whichever one it is, right? And if we're not reading those, nothing good happens. I can still remember one guy that I was working with, and he couldn't understand where all these fights were coming from.
Oh,
He had a mother who would park the nose right here. And look on the message. So he was always finding this, and he was always looking down. And I could figure out, one day it hit me. That's what happens when an overstimulated kid
oh, right.
is to re-stimulate. I'm
Right.
talking like an infant. So this is
Yeah.
burned into the hardware.
From
So
infancy.
whenever he
Yeah.
would talk to his wife, he'd be looking down here. And when he said a word that she would react to, he couldn't see it. He wasn't reading the clues.
Because he wasn't
Like
watching because he,
driving down the road looking like this,
yeah.
right? And so when I got him to be able to talk and observe at the same time, and it was funny. He told me, "I can't do that. I can't gather my thoughts." I said, "You're a CEO. How can how can you?"
Pretty sure
But
you.
It took about 45 minutes to get him safe with being able to make eye contact because remember, when it was a little one, it was overstimulating. So but what worked at 4 months was not going to work for a guy that was in his 40s, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And when I teach him to look, did you see the head go back?
Hmm.
Did you see the eyes squint? Did you just read the state? Now, that word probably didn't land. So you can change it and you can make an amends. Now, this is like a reading the moment, managing the moment. Notice when there needs to be a little tiny micro repair. That word, because when he didn't 5 minutes later, she just react to it, right? Because
Right.
he hadn't made the repair. When he was started to I got him into his right brain. He's reading emotionally and he's just responding before he does all the little logical stuff. 2 weeks later, they come in and he says, it's a miracle. He says 80% of our arguments have gone away
Wow.
because he was reading in small moments. And I think that's been the biggest thing that I've done in terms of rewiring my brain or even the people I work with is rewiring your brain to allow that beautiful right brain to feel into the context,
Okay. Yeah.
read each other's face. And when you have that, you automatically have a deeper wisdom.
Hmm.
You automatically are responding better. And that in context includes reading yourself to realize, that pit in my stomach is coming from somewhere. I wonder how I'm creating this experience. I'm getting triggered, right? But that witnessing mind that's not just the logical mind, but I'm
Hmm.
right brain feeling witnessing mind that feels in to groove that into your brain. Now it takes some work. I had to make it safe to do that because at one time it wasn't so safe to have my feelings. You got the socialization as a man, but regrooving that, right? And so I could respond in better ways. Well, that's why we wake up every morning like two kids on Christmas and we can't wait to see each other again.
Nice. Do you, were there any specific like exercises you did with yourself to work on that?
You know, a lot of it, I did a lot with tap and breathe,
Uh-huh.
EFT to really calm my nervous system
Okay.
because
Okay.
I learned that there was a residual amount of fight and flight left in me from many many years ago, and that is like cleaning things out. But the other thing was, getting finding out all the little pockets and the what I would call imprints that told me it wasn't safe to be
Hmm.
in connection,
Hmm.
and finding, and restoring those original feelings that I'm empowered to be able to respond. I'm not going to be disempowered. That
Right.
it's okay to worthy and to give worthy, to feel cherished and to give cherished. And
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing was learning to read, to step into my feelings and to really keep attention and eye focus. Um, it was a gradual process.
Yeah.
These things are the arch enemy
Oh, yeah.
of
Yeah.
they are attention sucking demons
Yes.
and they are anti, you know,
Anti-relational.
they are. Oh, they do
Yeah.
nothing good.
Hmm.
And there was a period of time when I was reclaiming things and this thing was taken away and I had to, like put it on sabbatical. But it's more finding more and more safer ways that you can feel safe just recovering your relational self. And if you're a man out there, that means feelings. That means being fluent in feelings. And if the time comes and I have to turn off my feelings to do protection, I don't lose that wiring as a man.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Every once in a while in life, I've had a time where I had just had to. There was an emergency, and I can go into that left brain that says we got an emergency, and I'll feel later. And that's not a problem,
Yeah.
when it's called for.
Yeah.
So those are the things that I've done. Uh,
Yeah. Okay. So it's kind of a constant awareness of this, like feeling into the other person's feelings, kind of tuning in and watching them and seeing how they're working. I also feel like that compassionate observer piece is also able to tune into your feelings and tell, like,
yes.
I'm getting triggered what's that all about as a clue to maybe something that's holding on to a rule and it may be running the show or making you behave in a way that is not helping you be in the relationship. So that part of you is also being very connected to your feelings in a non-judgmental way.
Yeah, and you got to retract your feelings,
Mhm.
especially in relationships.
Oh,
This was an intimate relationship, but a couple of years ago, uh, I was in a business deal and they were trying to steal my intellectual property and trying to get it back in negotiations. I found myself from a guy that was just gaslighting. And I thought, I'm staying calm, I'm going to stay calm. And then suddenly I realized my hand was shaking. I'm going, you are triggered, Dr. Salyer. I'm flooded.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and it's like, no, and I go, no, part says, no, I'm not. I go, you've done all this work. No, you are definitely flooded. you know, and so I said, tap. I did some tap and breathe,
Hmm. Hmm. Calm
and
yourself
then
down.
allowed myself, I backed off the discussion, for about 15, 20 minutes, let myself calm down, then re-entered with, you know, you've got to be able to notice and, and see who you are. Or just notice when there's a feeling you've given yourself with your own self-talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
Watch how you talk to yourself. You say something to yourself and then you get a bad feeling and go, where'd that come from? Oh, that's my own self-talk. Now
Yeah.
that's witnessing zone. What if I used a different word there? What if I said something that's kinder and nicer,
Yeah.
right? You know, uh, Nancy Dreyfus has a phrase for couples. Can you say that like someone who loves me, right?
Uh-huh.
We need to practice that with
With
ourselves. Can you
ourselves.
say that inside like someone who talks? Imagine that inner critic, and then we all got those. And we had another voice that said to the inner critic, can you say that to me like someone who loves me?
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, that's one thing. It's the title of a book,
Mhm.
or pretty close to it. Nancy Dreyfus has it, and I got it off of her. And it's a beautiful way of speaking, but it also applies to ourselves. Again, being centered and grounded and calm enough to witness. Because the more flooded you are, the harder it is to stay in this witnessing zone.
Oh no, I like it's it's like I would say it's almost impossible to be there and almost impossible to be compassionate towards yourself because you're so
Yeah.
activated.
So you train your brain ahead of time. If you train your brain and your body to remain calm before you get into the argument. If you wait, you're done. You're
Right.
gone.
Right. Right. That's a good point. I talk to people about setting intentions. So we often know we're going into a conversation. We might set an intention of how we're going to behave in that. And you said really briefly, like we have to retract our feelings around others. Were you suggesting don't just let it all hang out?
No, I would never say let's let it all hang out.
Yeah.
No, that, not everybody is worthy of your feelings.
Yeah.
What I did was I pulled my presence back and stopped my mouth long enough to do some inner work to calm myself down to get back in my prefrontal cortex.
Mhm.
Now, I can do that because I've trained my brain to do that multiple times. I've activated and myelinated and grooved new neural networks that know how to calm me down. That wasn't there 15 years ago. It's just like an
Yeah.
Olympic, when you do muscle mass, you have to keep working it.
Right.
And so, there is a certain intentional
Hmm.
and it is about, I do believe I've retrained my brain. I've always wondered if I had taken my brain 20, 25 years ago and had a Daniel Amen brain scan
Yeah.
on what it would be today. I wonder where the differences would
Yeah.
be because
Right.
I'm pretty sure that I've redirected energy to different centers and there's a different blood flow.
Yeah. Yeah. Different parts of your brain are working than they were when you were a lot younger. The same.
And I'll be honest, you know, I used to be an art major and then I walked away from it many years
Uh-huh.
ago. And I feel like I've had getting more and more into my attachment, my right brain, my feelings. I didn't lose the logic. I didn't lose that side, the abstract thought. What I got was, and I really do feel that for the first time in my life, I'm really Gary.
Nice.
And it ain't about being Dr. Sire. That's just a tool.
So you're not just showing up the way other people expect you. You're actually showing up from the core of who you are.
Or yeah, or I'm not showing up from a protective place.
Yeah, yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I'm showing up with all of me. I
Nice.
get to be both right and left brain.
Yeah, nice.
And a lot of men are told only to be left brain.
Yes.
And only logical. Well, how logical is it to only use half a brain?
Right. That would be stupid.
But that's what we did, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I have looked at this as, a way of regrooving and I mean, Dan Siegel's right.
Hmm.
And the flow of information, and information, I think, is one of them is feelings,
Hmm.
right? Redirecting it in a way that is truly love and getting my brain to be in a flow of love, literally electrons, and and I'm always learning stuff, but
Yeah.
I think I've cleared up most of that stuff with a borderline.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Sounds like
I think I'm good with that. And you've cleaned it up, by the way, when you can remember it without the feelings flooding you.
right. Yeah.
I can remember that I had certain feelings, but I'm not running the feelings
But the
anymore.
feelings aren't taking
And I'm
over.
not running the protector parts anymore.
Right.
It was an experience. It was just an experience. Now, I wouldn't say that to a client, but you can get to the place when you do enough of your work that, yeah, that was an experience. And I see it and without it, I see some soul lessons back there. I wouldn't have gone back to my 4-year-old and said, you're going through a soul lesson. But looking back, I call that getting in rapport with your incarnation. I
Yeah.
can look back and go, man, that was a rough patch, but a lot of that process showed me what questions to ask, how to be with people. And I've kind of reclaimed it as a superpower.
Yeah. That's beautiful. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. If people want to work with you or find out more about you, where can they go?
Well, if they want to find out more about me, I'm at GarySalyer.com.
Okay.
You can write me at Dr. Gary at GarySalyer.com, but there's all that stuff there for a client or anything. And, if you want to find out where my heart and soul is, just read my book, Safe to Love Again. It's on Amazon.
Yeah, it's a very, very good book. I would recommend people read it.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you joining me today and sitting down and talking about how to like rework all of this inner stuff. It's a bit of a journey, but it sounds like it's very well worth it.
Oh, yeah. It's
Yeah.
worth it. Definitely worth it. And if you're listening, love is not only worth it, but you are worthy. We
Yeah.
live in an epidemic of unworthiness. Don't let anybody tell you that. You were born worthy and empowered to find love. You just got to reclaim it.
Well, thank you very much.